Hey everyone, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. We're picking up where we left off last time for our Nintendo in Review 2017 discussion. This time we'll be talking about the rest of Switch's 2017 from E3 to the end of the year. So let's get started.
Okay, so yeah, clearly E3 was an exciting time this year. Nintendo had a lot of hype going in, they had a lot of hype coming out, and that hype carried them through the end of the year. Okay, so I think we already covered the next two games pretty well, being ARMS and Splatoon 2. Is there anything else you guys want to say about those before we move on?
I mean, we covered Splatoon 2 pretty well just doing our best of discussions, and I got my thoughts out about that. But it's great to see it's still doing very well, and had a good time with it. But it's just like Ash had mentioned, because the Switch lineup is so good, I have much less time for it.
I do. Yeah, I mean, I guess actually, yeah, there's more. We did cover ARMS more than we did Splatoon 2, because like I love Splatoon. I really truly love that game. It was such a breath of fresh air. And I don't want to focus too much on this because we covered this all in the Game of the Year stuff. But I do think, in my perception, Splatoon 2, I don't think has made the same impact that you might have expected based on Splatoon 1. It's done well, but I don't know if it's quite the event it perhaps could have been. Does that make sense? I don't know. I don't hear about many people talking about Splatoon 2 these days, whereas, and I'm speaking only for the US, I think it's pretty big in Japan, but I feel like maybe it was too similar to Splatoon 1, and that though it's still done well, I wonder if they squandered some of its potential by releasing it this early in the Switch's lifespan.
I think the fact that it is labeled as Splatoon 2 rather than Splatoon Deluxe does put a lot more pressure on it. The fact that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is like, okay, this isn't Mario Kart 8, this isn't Mario Kart 9, so we don't need to expect new tracks, but oh cool, there's new characters, oh, there's double item mechanics that sort of changes things up a little bit, there's an actual battle mode. You know, the expectations are a little bit lower there because it is a port, but because Splatoon 2 is not being marketed as a port, it's being marketed as a sequel, and it does fit that mold quite well, where there's a new story campaign, there's a new mode, there's 2 new modes now thanks to the updates, and then new weapons and stuff like that. There was a lot of new content there, but it still didn't keep it from being still feeling a little familiar.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's just going to be the case with any, you know, groundbreaking game that's followed up by a sequel that seeks to do more of the same. I mean, look at Super Mario Galaxy. A lot of people think Galaxy 2 is better, and that's fine, but Super Mario Galaxy will always get the credit for doing that, you know, doing a 3D platformer in that style, and Galaxy 2 didn't feel as groundbreaking in that sense. And I think that's what we're seeing with Splatoon 2. They're both great games, it's just that Splatoon 1 had the honor of introducing us to this wacky team-based shooter concept where instead of trying to take each other out, you're trying to splat the arena with ink, and that's really cool. That's a really cool idea. That's like a team-based shooter thing that only Nintendo could have done or come up with, but that's just, you're not going to get that same groundbreaking, like, whoa, this is totally new and cool in the sequel, because it's just seeking to refine and improve on what Splatoon 1 did. So I think that's just kind of impossible to avoid that to some degree.
So, I mean, I kind of disagree with that a little bit. I mean, I think the Mario Galaxy is a good comparison, actually, but in that case, I love Mario Galaxy 2 almost as much as Mario Galaxy 1. I do agree it wasn't as fresh either, obviously, it being an iteration. But I think that is a game that showed they can take the core concept and expand upon it. In that case, being away added Yoshi, for instance, which really did change like how those levels felt. And they played around with the idea of the gravity far more, I thought, than they did in Galaxy 1, while getting rid of the elements that didn't work, like some of those Wii pointer levels where you had to blow Mario in a bubble around, for instance. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't as groundbreaking as Mario 1 or as Mario Galaxy 1, but it still showed what else you can do with the concept.
Sure.
That's what I felt like was missing from Splatoon 2. They didn't really even try that. It was the same game with some minor incremental enhancements, with the sole exception of Salmon Run, which I think was fantastic, and I wish we had gone more along those lines. No, I want to stress, I like Splatoon 2. It just didn't hook me because I'd seen it before. So if it's your first time playing the game, it's still a great game. You're probably gonna have a really good time with it. But for me, it's like, I've seen this before. So I played it, got my fill, and I moved on.
Now, I do actually have a question. Did you play the single player campaign?
You know, I'm actually glad you brought this up because I want to bring this up in our Game of the Year. That was the most disappointing thing for me.
Okay.
It did literally nothing beyond what the first game did, except switching up the weapons on a level-to-level basis. I feel like there was so much more potential with the campaign that they could have done, and they did not even attempt to do at all. It was the exact same types of levels, and even the boss fight was a complete letdown compared to the first one. Like, whereas the first one built up to that amazing boss, the second one, it just kind of like petered out at the end.
I mean, there were still some great bosses in Splatoon 2, but the final boss, I think everybody can agree, it is just inferior. I remember talking to you, we were so hyped about, okay, what are they going to do this time? Because those first few bosses were interesting and entertaining and weird and, you know, sort of matched upon that. But then you get to that final boss and it's like, really? That's it?
Yeah. Although I will say that I think, you know, I too was disappointed by the lack of, you know, like the scope of Splatoon 2 single player was exactly the same as 1's in terms of, you know, there's almost the same amount of stages, maybe even the same amount of stages, the same collectibles, things like that mostly. However, I have to say, I do think some of the individual levels in the single player campaign really showed off cool new gimmicks and ideas that were not in Splatoon 1's campaign that I would like to see make a return in the form of, like, Splatoon single player DLC or something, because for as long as it lasted, I was really enjoying some of those really cool new level gimmicks. It's just you don't see them in the multiplayer, which is the main part of the game. But I think there's room for like a serious Splatoon single player campaign that really lets these ideas kind of have some room to breathe.
I'm still kind of hoping for a co-op or a squad-based Splatoon 1 campaign or a Splatoon single player campaign.
That could be fun.
Yeah, a squad-based single-player campaign. Yeah, that makes complete sense. No, a squad-based campaign for you to play together and work together in that way, and I think that could be a lot of fun and pretty interesting. But yeah, you're right. There are concepts they could put into the multiplayer that still be a lot of fun, like those bouncy sections. I think that'd be kind of fun to see everybody bounce around and how to handle that and whatnot. Where you get this extra height, but you're still very vulnerable. So there's a lot of things they could play with. I think we can probably see a lot more from Splatoon 3. I think this was just an effort to get Splatoon on the Switch as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. I don't fault them for it. It didn't quite do it for me for what I wanted Splatoon 2 to be, hopefully, but it's still a great game, and again, I can totally see why they did it. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people didn't have a Wii U, so it makes sense to use one of their precious new IPs and get in the limelight on the Switch. So... And yeah, you know, maybe it was a huge success. I really don't know. I'm not gauging it based on anything but my own perception. So, anyways, let's go and move on now to August, which had the launch of Sonic Mania on Switch, which is noteworthy for the fact that it actually got me to beat a Sonic game, a 2D Sonic game for the first time ever. Yeah, so I mean, this is a game that obviously hit every platform, but I think, you know, it being on Switch was a big deal. A lot of Nintendo fans are also Sonic fans, especially with Sonic having been on Nintendo now for, God, probably longer than he was on his own platforms. Jesus. Well, that's weird. Ever since the GameCube.
I know a lot of Nintendo fans became Sonic fans thanks to Sonic appearing on the GameCube with Adventure 2 and Adventure 1. So it makes sense to make sure that Sonic still appears on Nintendo consoles.
Right.
Well, it was really weird, too, because when Sonic Mania was first announced at the 25th anniversary party, it was only announced for PS4 and Xbox One and Steam, even though Sonic Forces, right after that, was announced for what was then known as the NX. So there was just like, you know, there were a few months there where people were like, why Sonic Forces? But there's this new 2D Sonic game coming out. It's not for the Switch. So going back to what you said, Andre, it was kind of a big deal that they, you know, got their act together. Now, of course, we had known since January that it was coming to the Switch because that's one of the things they revealed at the event. But yeah, there was no way Sonic Mania could have missed a Switch release. That just wouldn't have made any sense.
Yeah, it would have. It's a really great platform for Sonic Mania, which again you can say about literally any game ever. But it would have been weird had Sonic Mania missed a Switch.
Still curious why Disney Afternoon Collection didn't make it on the Switch, but
that's a weird one.
I know.
That's a weird one.
You know, in one other way, Sonic Mania was kind of a tentpole release for us specifically. Was that it? I mean, obviously, I was really excited about it, and so was Derek. But it was like I think our first co-review. Derek and I co-reviewed the game, and that's just kind of a cool, you know, obviously not important to Nintendo in 2017, but to GameXplain and Nintendo in 2017, we got to do our first co-review.
Yeah, I think people enjoyed that, and
that
was interesting to put together.
Would have been way more interesting if you guys had polar opposite views on the game, and Ash ended up hating Sonic.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of polar opposites, let's move on to another release date or another big game in August, being Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, featuring multiple things that really have no right to be together, yet this game somehow worked. And the interesting thing about this game is one that it had leaked out many months before, well before E3 even, and it did not have a favorable reaction initially. Although, it's a little bit interesting, because the very first thing that came out was an image of just Rabbid Peach, and that set the internet on fire. It seemed like people were like, what in the hell is that? But then I think we got full image a few hours later, and I think that started to temper the reaction a little bit, but even going into E3, there was a lot of mixed reactions. A lot of people were like, how could this game work? And I was always optimistic throughout the entire time, but also fully expecting the game not to work at all. Like, this could be either really good or it could be a complete piece of crap, because how do any of the things go together? And yet, I liked it a lot. It was a really good game. Like, it worked on the level it really shouldn't have, as we touched on in the Game of the Year discussion. And it ultimately ended up being a great way, just a great title to have at that time of the year. It's not a true Mario game, but it filled that Mario gap that might have been there, from it being a unique Mario title.
Yeah, because we got Mario Kart sort of early on. We got Mario plus Rabbids sort of in the middle, and then finish off the year with Mario Odyssey.
Exactly.
And how often do we get pretty major fun releases in August? August is usually a dead zone, so putting it in there was a great idea. And another really great idea, I think, is despite all the leaks and everything else about the game, the fact that they revealed it at E3 and then it was out within 2 months, that is genius. Like, it does not give people it didn't give people time to dissect it apart and say, what about this? This is dumb. Like, no, it's out. By the way, it's really fun, and that word of mouth, I think, helped it.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to play Mario Rabbids again. One of those games just fell through the cracks this year, but I didn't get a chance to play it a lot, but I did do some E3 previews for it, and I got to play it there, and even then, you could tell that there was so much love poured into every inch of that game, and that the Ubisoft's development team just had so much fun getting to work with the Mario characters and the whole IP. And you guys have said, everyone has said this, there's no way on paper that this should have worked. On paper it sounds like the worst idea, but Ubisoft proved us all wrong. It's a great, not only has it ended up being a good crossover, but the game's great. Like I said, even though I haven't gotten to play it myself, I know how good it is. Everyone's told me, and it's easy to look up videos of that game and just listen to Grant Kirkhope's music, or just look at the graphics, the cutscenes. There's so much charm poured into every little inch of that game. Rabbid Peach alone, just makes me, even having no context for how she plays within the game, just watching Rabbid Peach's animations and taking selfies just makes me smile every time.
Oh, I cracked up when I saw what happens when you get Rabbid Yoshi.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember that scene, don't you, Andre?
Was that was in a haunted world, right? Yeah.
Basically, he has his Gatling gun weapon, and he'd been captured during that boss fight when you finally rescue him, and then afterwards he just keeps shooting at the enemy down the well. You think he's done, and he just keeps going back to it. It's like, yeah, stop.
That was
stop,
like
he's already dead.
Zelda Breath of the Wild video I just posted a couple days ago of all the Guardians just shooting Link as he's already wrecked.
That was great.
Yeah, no, the game, it came out at a good time of year. It was way better than anyone expected it to be, and it also a new type of gameplay that we hadn't seen from Mario or Rabbids before, and especially from a AAA first-party type game, even if it technically is a third-party game. But who expected an XCOM style game with Mario and Rabbids to be on the Switch, especially?
Yeah. So, and third-party games, so that also probably encourages Ubisoft.
Yep, it all worked. All right. Moving on to September, we had the launch of Pokken Tournament DX. And looking back, I feel like this was a complete non-event. We forgot to even include it initially, I think. We almost forgot to even mention it on our list here. So.
Yeah, it was one of those things I was so busy with everything else that we had to give it, the game got reviewed by Jordan. And he took care of it. I'm like, where did this kid come from? Basically, but he handled Pokken Tournament, and I think he liked it. I hear the game it's a good port, and I enjoyed the original Pokken Tournament, but this game did not really add much. It did not fix any of the major problems it had. We got 5 new characters, I believe, most of which came from the arcade version, along with just one new Pokemon, which was Decidueye. And listen, the idea for Pokken Tournament is great. It is a awesome concept, and it is a lot of fun. But I had no reason to go back to that game. I was just kind of done. And that being said, I really want to see a Pokken Tournament too. I think it also could work.
Yeah, I mean, I really the original Pokken Tournament didn't do a whole lot for me as somebody who, I'm not great at fighting games anyway, so, or at least, most traditional fighting games, so I couldn't, I wasn't going to go play online for a long time, and this, it didn't really resonate with me on Wii U, so there's no way it was going to resonate with me on Switch. However, I'm glad we did remember to bring it up, because I want to talk about this game in the context of E3 really quick, only because there was a narrative this year where there are some leaks prior to E3 that we thought were going to be like Pokemon Stars coming to Switch, and the next big Pokemon game's coming to Switch. And as we all know, that didn't quite happen that way. We got there was a Pokemon Direct where they announced Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which caused such a negative backlash that there was a specific part of the Nintendo E3 demo or E3 Direct just completely devoted to somebody from the Pokemon team. I can't remember his name right now. I'm sorry. Just basically saying, hey, we just announced Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon a couple weeks ago, but don't worry, there's another mainline Pokemon game coming to the Switch. Peace out, I'm done. And that's literally all it was. But that's how unhappy people were with Pokemon on the Switch at that point. So I just thought that, talking about Pokken Tournament Deluxe just made me think of that.
I like that the biggest thing you can think of to talk about Pokken Tournament DX is something not even related to the game itself. And that kind of says all you need to know about it. I mean, yeah, the game came out on Wii U. It wasn't bad, but it didn't leave too big of a mark. And it being on the Switch, same thing. I don't think anyone really cared. Again, I said that without any knowledge of sales figures. Maybe it lit up the charts. I have no idea. But you don't hear anyone talking about it now, so...
Yeah.
Okay, well, moving on, we have... I know you want to talk about this, Ash.
Just really quick. I just want to put out there really quick that September was the month that a surprise demo of Project Octopath Traveler came out from Square Enix, and, we need to move on, but I'll just say I'm super excited about that game. I thought it was a really good demo. It's a great proof of concept. I'm so hyped for that game, so I did play the crap out of that demo. I needed to just mention it really quick.
I mean, yeah, it was a great demo, but I feel it's more appropriate for 2018.
Well, because it's coming out in 2018. I'm just saying, you don't really get a lot of, demos coming out for games that aren't even close to release like that. So I just thought it was kind of a weird, you don't get that often. So, yeah.
True.
I guess that kind of reminded me real quick of, I guess we touched on it earlier with the ARMS test punches and the Splatoon 2 test fires. That's cool. I'd like to see more demos in general. I guess it makes more sense for Nintendo to do it with the online games. But hopefully that's something to continue, especially with Smash Brothers, maybe?
I hope so.
Yeah,
Test
right?
Smash.
All right. Yeah, that'd be amazing. Oh, God. Can you imagine? Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
All right. We're getting ahead of ourselves. That's good 2018 discussion. All right, we got to remember that one. All right.
You're right.
Okay, next up, I want to talk about this 3-week period of the year, which, as well as a broader indie sense in general, but there were 3 weeks on the Switch where we got 3 amazing indie games, being SteamWorld Dig 2, followed by Golf Story, followed by Stardew Valley, and then was Axiom Verge the week after that, Ash? Or
I don't know if it was a week after, but it was somewhere in the middle of that crazy blitz of great indie releases.
Basically, within a small period of time, we got a ton of big indie games, and yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier with the indie support, but this week, or this month, I should say, specifically, really did showcase how strong of indie support is on the Switch, and also what the Switch can do for indie games. These games blew up. Stardew Valley, it's still, I think, at the top of the charts on the Switch, on the eShop. So yeah, it's awesome to see that level of support for these games, and for those games to be getting that level of support back.
I totally agree. The only counterpoint I would offer to that is that I think it also highlighted a problem endemic to the eShops, I guess the way it's laid out and the way, top-selling games are displayed. I've seen it said that had Golf Story come out after Stardew Valley, it may have not been the success it was, because Stardew Valley has so much more visibility on the eShop week after week. So
that's true.
It's been interesting, because Golf Story was the breakout indie success story of this year almost. It came out of nowhere and sold incredibly well on Switch, but it disappeared almost as soon as Stardew Valley came out. So I do wonder if those two had been shifted in the release schedule, how Golf Story would have fared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it cannot be understated just how much success the Switch has been for indie games. They've helped Nintendo by filling out the release schedule, but almost every one of them, every big indie release you hear about, they talk about how much better they've sold on the Switch compared to Steam, compared to the PS4, the Xbox One. It is just gangbusters, and usually twice or even 3 times as much as those other systems, even combined. That is insane. That's how much indie support the Switch has, and I can't be understated enough. It's just how much of a great symbiotic relationship is there. And there's still some indie games I'm excited for 2018. Like they announced it in 2017, but the fact that I'm really excited for Wargroove because it looks like Advance Wars, and I'll take my return of Advance Wars even through indies.
Yeah.
After that epic indie period, which still continues even, so it never really ended, but that was an epic few weeks there, we got Fire Emblem Warriors in October, and both on Switch and 3DS, so we can kind of touch on both here if we want.
Well, we almost didn't get Fire Emblem Warriors. You might want to talk about that first, actually.
I mean, I think that's a bigger...
Yeah, that is the bigger thing here, because Fire Emblem Warriors, people were... It feels like there was a big mistake was made just as a Fire Emblem fan with Warriors, is that they focused only on 3 games, 2 of which are the most recent. Like, it's the 3 games they cover all the time, and for something like a Warriors game, like you saw with Zelda, they covered, like, granted, they focused on 3 for the original release of Hyrule Warriors, but then DLC filled out those gaps, and as we're about to see with Fire Emblem Warriors, it's not doing that. It's not filling out any gaps, even with DLC, and it's only these 3 games being represented outside of a few other ones, like by the way, here's this character that will throw you a bone. And I think that was the biggest weakness of Fire Emblem Warriors, and why I don't think it clicked as much as Hyrule Warriors did, even though it plays extremely well. It plays great. But this is also a sign, it's also kind of funny because you mentioned the 3DS version, like, to me, this is like the 3DS felt like a safety net. Like, all right, if the Switch doesn't do well, at least we'll have the 3DS version we can fall back on and maybe get a little bit. That way, we'll have some audience there. But they didn't. I think we got maybe 30 seconds of 3DS footage on Fire Emblem Warriors. There was nothing on this. Kind of funny how that went, and I don't even know how the game is on the 3DS. I honestly don't care.
Fire Emblem Warriors it's a weird existence to me. I think a lot of mistakes were made. You just touched on a lot of them in relation to the character roster and the games they focused on. But I think they also made some missteps just with the release timing. The fact that it released like 2 weeks or so before Mario Odyssey.
Wasn't it 8 weeks?
You're right, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. A week before Mario Odyssey. I just feel like they could have found any number of other release windows for it. Like, even December. Like, if you have Xenoblade on December 1st, maybe finish off the Switch's, December with Fire Emblem Warriors toward the end of the month. So it's not completely cannibalized by Mario Odyssey. Like, I don't know why they released it when they did.
It should have came out the same time as it did in Japan, because that was at the end of September, which gave it a lot more time to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's especially odd with Nintendo being much better now about worldwide release dates. Release dates. Most of these games all came out on the same day, to my recollection, with Fire Emblem Warriors being one of the key exceptions here. And I really have no idea what they were thinking. I am completely baffled by it. And you add on to all of this, by the way, there was that crackdown that happened with Nintendo following the leak of Mario Luigi Superstar Saga on the 3DS, without being pirated and put on the internet. Granted, we don't have any direct details from Nintendo itself, but there were some articles put out around this time suggesting that Nintendo found out that the leak came from someone who got an early copy of the game in North America, like whether an influencer or something else, and that caused them to lock down who got copies right after, which sucked for 2 reasons. One, no North American press got Fire Emblem Warriors before release. No one did, so there was no press coverage of that game at all. And then subsequent to that is the fact that Mario didn't come in until just a few days before its launch, which also sucked. But that's a kind of a separate topic here. But I really do think, I said at the time, and I don't know if I said it on our discussions, but I felt like that the lack of press coverage is going to hurt that game, and it seems like it did. I mean, I can't sit here and say that's why the game seemingly failed, and maybe it didn't. I don't know. I don't have the sales. But I felt like the game came out and didn't do anything, to my knowledge. And I really do think that the lack of press coverage, that didn't help.
Yeah, the only reason we were able to cover is because we got an OE copy.
Yeah, right, that's right, exactly. We were one of the few with a review, because Nintendo, I think, sent us one of his extra copies.
Yes.
Because Nintendo of Europe had no problem sending out the versions of the game, which again is really weird on a worldwide basis. So as part of this, so touching on something Ash is saying with the release timing, is the fact that even with reviews that came out post-launch, did anyone, they got no attention, because Mario was happening then. Mario reviews were already coming out by the time you could have even reviewed Fire Emblem Warriors with how long that game was. So yeah, the whole thing was baffling. I think that bit Nintendo hard, even if I understand their reaction to the leak. I think ultimately that harmed Fire Emblem Warriors. On top of the fact, I think the game itself may not have been that exciting. With Hyrule Warriors, it was kind of an exciting concept on the level of Zelda combined with, what's that franchise called originally?
Oh, Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah, like that's exciting. It's like, oh, who saw that coming? Whereas Fire Emblem Warriors, like, oh, that kind of makes sense. So it's not that exciting, right? It's the same, you know.
I mean, again,
characters.
it'd be exciting if they chose from across
Better
the
characters.
series rather than just 3 games. Like, there's 14 games.
I mean, that'd be more exciting for sure. But I think even as a concept, it's not quite as exciting.
True.
But it's more expected. If that makes sense.
Oh, sure.
Right? But you're putting medieval characters in a medieval game already.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely
Zelda's
more
saying-
of a
I guess
yeah, I was
commonality.
going to say, Zelda's kind of
Zelda,
medieval.
But I mean,
But I get what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, you
Yeah.
see what I'm saying, right?
Because like
It's-
there are all so many sword users and things like I get
Yeah,
what you're
exactly,
saying.
yeah.
The one other thing I would bring up about Fire Emblem Warriors really quick is that it did include one very un-Nintendo-like option that I really appreciated and I hope comes back in future Switch games, which is the ability to switch between a performance-focused 720p mode or a resolution-focused 1080p mode when playing. When docked, playing on the TV, and that's just something that I always prefer having that choice, and that's something you see in a lot of PS4 and Xbox One games, but never Nintendo games. So it might have been an Omega Force thing that they wanted to add, but I hope to see that come back in more Switch games. I thought that was a surprising but cool option to have in a Switch game.
Absolutely.
I guess we can just roll on right into Super Mario Odyssey, which came out in October. And I was originally going to say, like, Nintendo bookended their year with 2 huge games, being Zelda, which is, many would say, one of the best Zeldas ever made, if not one of the best games ever made, and then Mario Odyssey, which is one of the best Mario games, if not, some would say, the best Mario game ever made. But I can't even say that, but there's still a few games that came out after that, including Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in December. So the fact that Mario came out in October, one of the best games of the year still, before when the Switch is just barely 6 months old, is crazy to me. Like, that really is the craziest thing here.
Oh, yeah.
More than how great of a game Mario is, the fact that it came out, it and Zelda came out in the same year of the Switch's launch, well before the holiday season even is crazy to me.
Oh yeah, because I think
Yeah.
everybody saw Mario Odyssey, we thought November release, and then they said
Right.
October, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, brilliant, because Mario Odyssey was in the think space, so I think there was a bunch of releases in November, but I still think Mario Odyssey was being talked about throughout all of November.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really was. And the fact that they positioned Odyssey's release at the end of October, no one saw that coming. And that's just, I mean, that really kind of goes into Odyssey in general. I mean, it's a fantastic game, but more than that, it's a different take than what we've ever seen on Mario. I mean, you go back and you, like, the E3 trailer, that was the first time any of us ever heard Jump Up Superstar. So at this point, it seems like, okay, New Donk City, Jump Up Superstar, yeah, they're great, but back when the game was like re-revealed in May, this was a completely new take on Mario, and Odyssey completely delivered, I think, on that completely different thematic take on Mario when it actually came out.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
people were freaking out back in January when we saw Mario hanging out with real-life humans. Or,
Yeah.
like, realistic humans, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it kind of showed, like, just how off the wall the game was. Like, they were taking it in a different direction. Even if that direction was a return to form for 3D Mario, it had been 15, 20 years since we'd seen that. So that is cool, and it was fun to see them experiment with different mechanics, different art styles, and all that. But if you want to hear more about me gushing about Mario Odyssey, you can listen to our Game of the Year discussion. Otherwise, I'm going to move on now to November, and it's probably a good thing for Sonic that Mario was released in October, because November is when Sonic Forces came out.
Sonic was
And-
on top for 2 months.
Yeah.
So Sonic Forces.
Sonic
Yeah.
Forces.
I mean, I reviewed it. It's a meh. I gave it a meh. It's not a horrible game, but it's just not. They followed up the best, most wonderful Sonic game in over 20 years with just another meh, like completely forgettable modern Sonic experience. And I've said this, it was my most disappointing game. Like, I've talked about it, but they basically they took 6 years to make a game that was worse than the game that Forces was supposed to be based on. So, it is what it is. It's unfortunate, but. Yeah,
I don't know the truth in this matter, but I think I heard that they spent 5 of those years developing the engine.
I heard something about that too, and then of
I'm
course
not
you got
sure if
the
that's
Avatar
true.
character stuff. Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened there. What the
They
development.
better not spend 5 years on that engine.
I don't. I hope not.
I
Like,
have-
I don't.
Yeah, it's at first it was like, oh man, what is Sega thinking putting out Sonic Forces 2 weeks after or a week after, however long after Mario Odyssey, and it's like playing it was like, it doesn't matter when this thing came out, nobody would have appreciated it.
Yeah.
There are people that like it, but again, it's for most people it is just such an average game.
Oh, it is, yeah. But...
Well, and also, like, specifically speaking about the Switch version, Sonic Forces is what I think was one of the first high-profile examples of, like, serious, not just a minor graphical downgrade on the Switch, but, like, a serious performance downgrade, because I think Sonic Forces maxed out at 720p, 30 frames per second, even when you're playing in dock mode, which was pretty surprising. I mean, not that Sonic Forces is a great-looking game on other platforms, especially PS4, but, like, it didn't seem like it looked good enough that the Switch would have that much trouble with it. So that was kind of disappointing too.
It was probably a quick port considering, like, you know, how when we found out, you know, with the dev kits going out and whatnot. So,
to Sonic Force's credit, it's not really anything about the game itself, but I hesitate to use this term because I don't know if it really applies here. But Sonic Forces is kind of a AAA third-party game, and it's still good to see those like that type of game hitting the Switch at the same time as the other platforms, even if the port is inferior. And that kind of leads me to my next point, though, where we had what I called here on a little notepad thing, a third-party extravaganza with like Doom, Skyrim, LA Noire, Rocket League, and Resident Evil Revelations all hitting the Switch within basically weeks, if not a month or two of each other. And yeah, that's awesome.
Every single one of those is a November release, which is insane.
That is insane, exactly. So between that and Sonic Forces, like, this is where we're starting to see like that third-party level of support. Like, I think now finally, I mean, I don't know when all these projects began development. Clearly Skyrim began pretty early because it was in the initial trailer. But I do think we're finally starting to see the wave of games come after people are realized, oh crap, the Switch might be something here. And it's awesome to see these games coming to the Switch alongside the announcement of Wolfenstein 2, also, or not Wolfenstein 2,
Wolfenstein 2.
Yeah, Wolfenstein 2,
yeah,
the new Colossus,
okay, cool. Yeah.
Which is actually being developed. I think we recently found out that's being developed by the same guys who did the Doom port, which was really good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really, that's something I was going to say is Doom is emblematic, even though Sonic Forces was not, Doom is emblematic of the fact that a lot of these third-party ports are optimized for the Switch, and they really look and run great. I mean, I don't think anyone expected Doom, the 2016 Doom, to be able to run and look as good as it does on the Switch. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's 30 frames per second. Obviously you're running it. It's if you look side by side, it's going to look worse. But who cares? You're playing 2016 Doom on a handheld. Like, that's nuts, and it looks good, and it runs well. I mean, that's really cool, and I think that kind of points to a larger overall point that Nintendo, with their R&D for the Switch, they really knocked it out of the park by landing on the right crossroads between power, price, and performance. And I think if they had not landed on as good a point as they did with all those three factors, the Switch might have we might be having a slightly different conversation now. So you got to really give it up to Nintendo's R&D people for landing right on that perfect mix of factors.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest issues, though, going into this, though, with these third parties, is Nintendo needs to share how they compress their games so much to keep their sizes down, because with every one of these games, except for Rocket League, but with all the others, they take up a ton of space on the Nintendo Switch. And granted, a part of that might be because they don't want to pay the extra cost to get the bigger cards for the physical versions. But even if you go all digital, these are some huge file sizes. I mean, I naturally got a SD card right at launch to make up for the 32 gigs built in. But even with these games and the size of them coming out, if you can get a bunch of them, you're going to fill up your space pretty quick.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I'm at the point now where I need to get an SD card. Like, I've been cleaning out the refrigerator, as Nintendo would say, or whatever.
I got mine right off the bat. I have I think a 250 or something like that, as big as I could get. And now, granted, they did say that they will go up to what, 2 gig? 4 gig? I forget which, but those aren't even available yet. So
I think it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, but, not 2 or 4 gig. Maybe you're thinking terabytes, or I don't know.
Oh, right. Terabytes is what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting we bring this up anyway, because I think the fact that there was so little onboard memory on the Switch in general, and required that you get an SD card if you want to build a large digital library, I think that was one of the things that we were initially a little concerned about, in terms of the decision Nintendo had made there. But in hindsight, I don't think that seems to have affected them or the Switch adversely. Like, people don't seem to have minded getting SD cards to expand their memory on the Switch.
Yeah, not really. I mean, not yet. I mean, again, we're
Not
still
yet,
in the
at
first
least.
year, so
Good
we'll
point.
see.
Yeah.
Again, Nintendo are wizards as far as getting those file sizes down for their first-party games. Because I
Yeah.
was shocked when I looked at Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and saw there was only like 13 gigs. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's amazing, especially when you look at Xenoblade Chronicles X and how you had to have extra download stuff. I had to make sure to get an external so that, to handle all the DLs, like the added stuff to make it run better on the Wii U. That is insane.
Next up, in December, there were no... Oh, actually, no, I'm wrong. I was going to say there's no major first-party releases. That's obviously wrong.
Yeah,
I just said
exactly.
that. We
Thanks,
had
Andre.
Xenoblade Chronicles... Yeah, well, you were just talking about it. We had Xenoblade Chronicles too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems like that was a strong way to end the year on from a first-party perspective. Well, from a game-only first-party perspective. Because, yeah, that game seemed to have been received pretty universally quite well. Even if it is a more niche game. But no, I mean, it's a cool way to end of the year, even if it is a more niche game. Like, it's not reaching the demographic Mario or Zelda will, but it will hit that JRPG demographic that has been more limited.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
there is a demographic for JRPGs. Like the fact that I think the 64 only had 2, maybe 3 JRPGs on the system, like that is a niche that should be filled. And Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a great way to do that. It is a fantastic series, and 2 is doing very well. I don't know the exact numbers for how much it's selling, but it did sell better than both the original Xenoblade Chronicles and X in Japan. So this is a definite success.
That's impressive, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just we touched on this earlier, but I think just the fact that it came out this year at all is
Yeah,
awesome
it's
and
amazing.
surprising.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that, yeah, I mean, you know, I've heard some stories that could maybe have used a few more months or like a few more weeks of development time, especially as it relates to the performance of handheld mode. But,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
does get a
still-
little ugly in handheld mode, which I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm playing that game on my big screen TV. I'm not.
No,
playing
and
it
that's
on
that's
my
fair.
handheld.
And I mean, and I think that there's something to that because they were obviously comfortable releasing what they had in December, and that was probably partially because, like, hey, this is a big screen console experience first and foremost. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a great game, and it's what a great way to close out or almost close out the Switch's first year.
Absolutely.
And one of the final games to close out the Switch's first year was a game that was originally supposed to come to the Wii U, but didn't, being Yooka-Laylee. So this game is interesting because it does kind of speak to Nintendo fans, obviously coming from X-Rare staff who were involved with Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64. Nintendo 64 was the go-to platform for 3D platformers, and this is the game that returned to that era. The problem, though, kind of, in a way, well, 2 problems. 1, I didn't think it was very good, and 2, Mario Odyssey beat it to the punch on the Switch. So, even though it seemed like it was the best version of Yooka-Laylee, based on your impressions, Ash, for consoles at least, I wonder if it's too little too late at this point.
It'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see how the sales shake out for the Switch version of Yooka-Laylee, because as we know, there have been a lot of games, as Derek touched on earlier, that, you know, the sales numbers come out for all platforms, and the Switch numbers are way above the rest. So I am curious to see how that shakes out for Yooka-Laylee, but, I mean, yeah, obviously, when the game came out in March, it wasn't, you know, it had even more problems, and, you know, I've been kinder to the game than you, Andre. Obviously, I like it, and especially as a Switch version, I think it is the best console version. But it's kind of interesting, because in a way, Yooka-Laylee and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are actually kind of opposites in that way, because Xenoblade 2 was obviously designed as a TV mode first experience in mind, whereas I found the Switch version of Yooka-Laylee, it plays fine on TV mode, but it's actually, I feel, particularly well suited to handheld mode. So I just find it interesting that these 2 games came out right next to one another and are kind of opposites in that sense.
I think one thing that'll help Yooka-Laylee as far as in relation to Super Mario Odyssey anyway, is that it has been about 2 months since Odyssey came out. So most of the people who got Odyssey when it first came out are finished with the game, have moved on. So if you're looking for another 3D platformer, Yooka-Laylee is a decent choice for that if you're into that type of platformer, and with it being the best version. So I think that sort of divide will help it a little bit. I don't know how much it will, but potentially at least. But of course, if you haven't played Odyssey yet, if you're gonna look between the 2, you're obviously gonna pick Odyssey.
You better.
Yeah, you would think so.
Although with Ash putting Odyssey at number 4 on his top of the games list, I don't know anymore, man.
Well, Yooka-Laylee wasn't 1, 2, or 3, was it? So, yeah.
That's true. All right, so to almost close out the end of the year here, we had the Game Awards, which really do serve as a fun, like, little punctuation mark on the year in general. And this year we had some pretty big announcements from Nintendo, including Bayonetta 1 and 2 coming to the Switch. Ports of them coming to the Switch. Kind of in a combo pack, but also not. You can buy them individually if you want, I believe. But beyond all that, I mean, that's cool by itself. Like, those games are fun. It's awesome to get those on the Switch. It's more games. But beyond that, the announcement of Bayonetta 3. And we'll talk more about, we'll talk about specifics, I'm sure, about in our 2018 discussion, if it even comes out that year. But yeah, like, that's cool to see, more support. If in this case, it feels like Platinum Games might almost be a second-party developer.
In some ways, in other ways, not so much. At least when it comes to Bayonetta. But, I mean, I'm always happy for more Bayonetta. I was really excited by that announcement. It makes complete sense to get Bayonetta 2 off of the Wii U and onto the Switch to really reach an audience. Much more so than it ever could on the Wii U. Like, thank God for Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U so we can actually continue this series. But it needs to be on the Switch in order to really match everything else. And honestly, this is just sort of its own little thing, but thank God we're getting Bayonetta 3 at all, because we found out earlier in the year that, Microsoft killed off Scalebound, which was being developed by Platinum. And apparently all the development and all the time they had put into that game nearly bankrupted them. So if it wasn't for the success of Nier Automata, Platinum Games might have been dead.
And the industry as a whole would be worse for it.
Yeah, it's like, thank God that didn't happen, and hallelujah, more Bayonetta. And I'm looking forward to picking up the 2-pack in February, and it is an indication that we'll probably still see some more Wii U ports come 2018.
I still think we're going to see the Wonderful 101 at some point. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because that's another Wii U game that got so undersold and underexposed that seems like, why wouldn't they want to bring it? And I feel like also the Switch with its touchscreen might be particularly well suited to it. I don't know. I didn't play much of it back when it came out on Wii U, but I feel like, we're talking about Bayonetta.
It seemed to use the controller a lot more than Bayonetta ever did. Like, you actually had to look down at the bottom screen, so that would take a bit more reworking, which I think would make it also more expensive and less likely to port, because, oh god, we gotta sink more money into this, into something that didn't do well to begin with.
That's true, and it didn't sell that well to begin with, yeah. And it may not just have been because of the Wii U either.
Yeah, so hard to say.
Now, there is one more announcement from the Game Awards. I guess it wasn't a reveal, but it was an announcement, and that's it really was an announcement. we finally found out what the Champions Ballad DLC was. We had no idea what it was, really, beyond a vague story promise. We got a full trailer, it made it look awesome, and then they announced it was hitting almost literally right after the Game Awards. Like, mere hours after, you were already streaming it, Derek.
Yep.
And that is kind of cool. Like, even though I have my problems with the DLC, I like that it came out right after. I love surprises like that. It's like, hey, isn't this cool? Here you go, you can play it right now. But also, there is something poetic about how Zelda Breath of the Wild both began and ended the Switch's year, effectively, from a first-party perspective. You could play Zelda first, and now this is going to be the last thing you probably end up playing this year, or possibly playing this year. So that's really cool. Like, that's a really... I like that aspect.
We do. I do want to point out that it's. We keep saying the Switch's first year, but of course the Switch's true first year ends in March. But we're talking about
the Switch's first release year.
Yeah, the
first,
2017
calendar year. Yeah.
Still, I mean, it is great. It was great to have it come out there as a nice surprise and fun. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, this goes, we've talked about this plenty, so I won't say much here, but I mean, yeah, this goes back into Nintendo's messaging about the DLC not obviously being that great, but, because what we thought the Champions Ballad was didn't end up being quite commensurate with what it actually ended up being. However, we still enjoyed it. I mean, I know Derek and I did, and you actually, Andre, you didn't think you would, but you ended up being surprised by it, and liked it. So, even though it didn't quite end up being what we thought it would be because of Nintendo's poor messaging, I was happy that it was suddenly available right after the Game Awards. I too like surprises like that. Yeah. And all told, it ended up adding a lot of quality playtime for me to Breath of the Wild. So I ended up being happy with it.
Well, that is good to hear. But that's a good way to end the year, because that is effectively the end of major releases for the Nintendo Switch.
It's more announcements than anything else, like stuff to be excited for next year, especially when it comes to more stuff from third parties, because we got Mega Man 11 plus 18 classic Mega Mans coming to the Switch, plus from Namco Pac-Man Championship Edition 2 plus.
Right.
No, we're continuing to see third parties react positively to the Switch, and You know, I mean, you and I talked about this so much, Derek. It was just a matter of time before the Mega Man Anniversary Collections came to Switch. I always knew that would happen.
You mean the Legacy Collections? Because I don't want the Anniversary Collections on the Switch.
Oh, that's Anniversary. Sorry, Legacy Collections. And yeah, like you said, Mega Man 11. Like between that and things like Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, which also got announced this month, by the way, for the Switch. So it just seems like we're entering into this time now where big third-party releases, now that they've had a chance to react to the Switch's success, they're just going to, for relevant games, they're going to announce them on all platforms to begin with. So, yeah, we saw that with Street Fighter 30th.
Indeed. Yeah, it's good to have that bridge going into 2018 with more announcements happening literally almost right up to 2018. And, it seems like the Switch is just on... I mean, if anything, we already said earlier how the Switch had a really good first year, and they're carrying the momentum right into next year. So we'll see if they can keep that momentum up, but so far it seems promising. So is there anything else, guys, you want to touch on with 2017 before we wrap it up? Because I know we've already gone on way longer than I expected. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
for the Switch specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to just wrap it up for the Switch specifically, we've already seen the success of it. Nintendo has come out and said that it has sold 10 million units worldwide as of, I think, the end of November? Something like that?
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, right around there, yeah.
That's insane.
That's insane. I mean, it's insane when you consider the context of the Wii U selling, what, 14 million across 4 years, I think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to almost match sales of the Wii U within the first 9 months of the Switch is, well, I'd say it speaks more about the Wii U than the Switch. But the fact that they were able to reverse that hard is fantastic. Like, it just goes to show, you can't count Nintendo out. Like, when you think they're down and out, they'll come back stronger than ever, it seems.
I think we've said this before, like, towards the end of the Wii U, like, we were, like, trying to drum up hope for the future, and we were always like, Nintendo is always at their best when they're backed into a corner.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, Nintendo, when they're firing on all cylinders and they know what they're doing, that is best Nintendo, and we've seen that throughout the year, not only in terms of the Switch and how they've managed it and its launch, but also the games they've put out for it. I mean, like stuff like Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey. These games are Nintendo firing on all cylinders. And yeah, like we all said last year, when Nintendo's backed into a corner, that's when you really want to start paying attention, because then things start getting really exciting.
It's true. So which means after the Switch is, now that the Switch is successful, the next platform will be kind of lame by comparison, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We got hills and valleys going on right now.
Although I guess, as a sobering reminder, obviously no one's going to question that the Switch has done incredibly well and its future is bright. However, I personally was really surprised to find out that the NPD sales came in for November, and that the Switch actually finished in last in terms of all the major consoles. Even like the Xbox One X's launch outsold it. Which, I mean, it doesn't mean Nintendo's fine. Obviously, it's November. I'm just saying, I'm surprised. That's all.
No, I agree with that. Totally. It's way too early to sound any alarm bells at all. You'd be a fool too, especially because I don't think it came in that far behind them. At the same time, it is surprising. I think December will be more telling.
Yeah.
Because, as far as I know, I don't think the Switch is stock limited in November, so I don't think that's what held it back. But the other platforms, I think they have some really good sales going on, which definitely inflated their numbers. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with December, but yeah, I would not read too much into it, even if it is surprising. I did expect Switch to take first place, even with it being more expensive, and Mario having just launched the month before. So, yeah, that was a little surprising. But
you expected them to take first?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I kind of expected them to take second. I was like, I still think PS4 is going to come out on top. But
I could have seen first just because it was being labeled as the hot ticket item this year. For a lot of
the Switch, I believe, was first almost every other month of the year, I think. Mm-hmm. So for it not to get first in what is typically one of their strongest times of the year, that's surprising. So again, not a big deal, not as a bullet point. But if that trend continues, then I might start getting a little bit concerned. But for now, it doesn't matter. So we'll way to end this on the downer there.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Way to go.
Hey, it's on our list, so don't blame me.
True. It was. You're right. It was added. All right, guys. Anything else for the Switch we want to touch on, or are we done here? So we can move on to the 3DS in our second part of the discussion.
Part two. Part
Nintendo's
two.
doomed.
In quotes. Yep. No, Nintendo got doomed.
Right. Yeah, Nintendo's not doomed anymore. They got doomed. That's a good way to
true.
put it.
They're set.
No, I think I'm good.
I'm good. Great year for Nintendo in 2017, and very excited to talk about what their potential is for 2018.
That's true. But before that, Derek, we have to touch on the 3DS and everything else related to Nintendo, which we'll be discussing in part 2. So make sure to stay tuned for that, guys. Otherwise, stay tuned to GameXplain for lots more on Game of the Year stuff, totally, and everything else Nintendo as well. Or End of the Year stuff, and everything else Nintendo as well. Catch you later. Bye.